Today's lesson is on experimental and theoretical probability. So we'll start with some key ideas. Experimental probability is probability that's based on an experiment. So if you have flipped a coin a certain number of times and you've counted how many times a certain outcome has happened, you can collect some experimental probability. The probability that an event will occur is the number of times that the event happened out of the number of trials that you did. On the other hand, a theoretical probability is the ratio of the number of favorable outcomes to the number of possible outcomes. So the only difference here is this is what actually happened. This is based on our experiment. And this is based on what we think should happen, based on, in theory, theoretically, what should happen as far as our probability. Okay, so let's look at this first example. We're looking at experimental probability, so we're not looking at theoretical, we're looking at what actually happened. So here we have this bar graph, and we can see that we rolled a number cube, and not all of the events occurred equally, and that often happens, even though theoretically we would expect that a 2 would happen just as often as a 1. In this case, that's not what happened in the experiment. They weren't exactly even. So this is our results. We want to know the experimental probability of rolling an odd number. So what we want to do is add up the number of odd rolls that we had. So that would be based on 1, 3, and 5. So it looks like we rolled a 1 10 times, and we rolled a 3 8 times, and we rolled a 5 11 times. So that's a total of 29 odd rolls. Now we want to add up the total number of rolls. So we're going to add up 10, that's how many ones, plus 4 is how many times we rolled a 2, plus 8, plus 11, plus 11, plus 6. So we've added up all of our data here, and that's 50. So it looks like we rolled 50 times, which we were told that as well, but we verified that it's on a 50 times. So 29 out of 50 times, we rolled an odd number. So that's 29 out of 50, so we could leave it as a fraction right that. We could write it as a decimal, or we could write it as a percent. That's 58%, so a little bit more than half. Even though theoretically, it probably should have been about half. Based on our experiment, it was 58%. All right, so now we'll make a prediction based on some experimental probability. So if it rained 2 out of the last 12 days in March, we want to know if this trend continues, how many rainy days would you expect in April? So the key is if this trend continues. So it rained 2 out of the last 12 days. We know that April has 30 days. So we want to find out how many days we're expecting rain in April. So we could solve this using cross products. We have 12x equals 60. We'll divide by 12 on both sides. And we would expect that in 30 days, 5 days of rain. Okay. Now, let's switch gears and talk about theoretical probability. So here we have these letter cubes that spell out explore, there it is. You randomly choose one of the letters shown, and we want to know what's the theoretical probability of choosing a vowel. So we know theoretical probability is the number of favorable outcomes over the number of possible outcomes. So our probability of choosing a vowel will be 1, 2, 3 vowels out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 letters. So we have a 3 out of 7 chance, which we could also write as 43%. 3 divided by 7.43, or 43%. All right, one more theoretical example. Here we have this game at a fair, and we're trying to win one of these bobblehead prizes. And we win the bobblehead when the probability, theoretical probability of winning the bobblehead is 1/6, or 1 out of 6 times we should win. If we know that the wheel has 3 bobblehead sections, we want to know how many sections are on the wheel. So if the theoretical probability is we should win 1 time out of 6, and we know that there are 3 bobblehead spaces, we want to figure out how many total spaces are there. So we can solve this proportion by multiplication. And so we have x equals 18 total spaces. We can do this when it's based on theoretical probability because this is what should happen. Perhaps based on experimental data, maybe you win more often than 1 out of 6, maybe you win less often than 1 out of 6. But based on the number of spaces, we can figure out how many sections there are. All right, go ahead and try a few on your own. I'll see you soon.